Welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm your host, Bill Hirschman. I'm the editor-in-chief critic for FloridaTheaterOnStage.com. And our topic today is there is no business like show business. And we have the usual gang of usual suspects here. We'll start with South Florida theater legend Iris Acker. And South Florida Renaissance man Michael McKeever. And an incredibly legendary actress, the wonderful Karen Stevens. Today we are joined by easily one of the best and most qualified guests we could possibly have to discuss the business end of show business. We have today the managing director of Palm Beach Drama Works, Ellen Beryl. Thank you very much for coming and submitting yourself to these incredible juggernaut and gamut of questions.
Well, thank you for asking me. I really appreciate it. I don't think that the business side of show business gets enough attention, so I appreciate that.
There you go. We'll fix that. Anyway. One of the reasons that I think you're a wonderful choice is that the Palm Beach Drama Works has grown so, not quickly, but so steadily and surely. You're entering your 14th season this year,
yep.
And you have never been in the red. And you have grown from operating, I think the first time I saw you was at a church somewhere, and you now have graduated over several spaces to your own theater in West Palm Beach, a multi-million-dollar renovation of the Quillo Theater. Would you discuss what secrets have you learned? The fact is there are theaters all over this region that have closed, and they're by doing good work and operated by smart people. What is it that you have done that's managed to account for this success?
Well, I wish I could take all the credit, and I wish I could bottle it if it were actually a secret that we could manufacture and give to others. And first, I would like to mention that it's the Don and Ann Brown Theater now that we take that has taken over the Quillo Center for the Arts. But I think primarily, Bill, it's about taking small steps and sure steps, and never doing anything that you can't afford to do. Bill and I are very serious about our budget. We plan it very far in advance, and we make sure that anything that we're planning to do, we can afford to do. So that's what it is. I mean, rather than saying, oh, I'd love to put on this fabulous show with 25 dancers and fabulous costumes, we know what we can afford, and we only do what we can afford. And then as we build up some reserves, we know we have a little bit of a cushion, so we can add something maybe that is a little bit outside of the box. And that we might not produce ordinarily, but we know we have a little cushion so we can afford to do it.
So, Ellen, you've kept your audience. They have followed you, haven't they?
Oh, absolutely, and they've grown. Yeah.
I'm trying to think what Bill said about the other theaters closing. They've lost their audience. It didn't have to do with budgeting, I don't think, on the theater end's part. And as I say, does it have to do with the product?
Well, I think a lot of people are doing very good work, and I know that our audience helped define who we are. So we made certain that we were doing things that they wanted to see by sticking true to our mission at the same time, which can be, that's the director's dilemma that I know Bill will be talking to you about if he hasn't already. So I think because we know what they want and we give it to them in a very high quality, professional way, they come back for more. And listen, it doesn't hurt being on the busiest corner in downtown West Palm Beach. We get wonderful exposure just by being there. People walking by all the time. It's a very busy place, and we have found that once they come in, they come again and again.
Since we're talking about money, I know ticket sales account for a portion of your annual budget. Where does the rest of the money come from?
Well, of course, we're a not-for-profit theater, so we have to fundraise quite actively every year. We raise about $1 million a year, aside from our capital campaign. This is just for our operating budget, about $1 million, which represents about 40% of what we need to do.
Wow.
And we have lots of events. We have a guild that has events. We have a wonderful program called Knowledge and Nibbles, where people come to learn about the play and have lunch at the same time. Of course, we do a big gala every year that raises a lot of money. But mostly it's about people who want to support the arts and who love what we're doing. And I think they have confidence in our stability because we have been in the black for 14 years or 13 years. They feel like their investment is a good one. And so they donate again and again. And I have noticed, even during the downturn, our numbers were good for development, but these last couple of years have been stellar. People are, more gifts and greater gifts. So we're very thrilled about that.
Great.
How many subscribers do you have now?
As of the other day, we had.
No, I happened to ask.
Yeah, we had 4,200 going into this new season, our 14th season, and that does not include our 3-play Flex Pass subscribers, and we typically get another 300 of those. So every year, even though there's some attrition, we do always lose a few people, unfortunately some to health and death. Sometimes their spouse has gone and they don't want to come alone. There are different reasons why people don't come back. Sometimes they don't like the season. But we do poll everyone when they don't resubscribe. We say, why aren't you coming back? And that's usually a very small percentage. But we've been lucky enough to have those people made up for by new people and then gone ahead. So we're really thrilled to be at the place where we ended last year. We're already ahead of that. So we're really thrilled about that.
How important is your background? I'm sorry, Karen. Your business background has led to this. You can take classes and learning to do what you've done.
Well, no, let me back up one step because you've hit it right on the head. Both you and your husband Bill Hayes, who is the artistic director, you both bring a unique meld that she's referencing, that you both come from a theater background as well as a business background, and that Iris is talking about. Can you talk just a little bit first about what you guys bring to the table and then address what she's talking about?
Yeah, well, I definitely agree. We're both using both sides of our brain in that way. We're both creative and we both have business backgrounds. And Bill has strengths where I don't. I've had a financial background. I went to Pace University and got a business degree and worked in finance for many years. And I also worked in advertising, but it was always on the financial side. And I think you really need to know that. You really need to know your numbers. I think that, to get back to maybe where other people have failed, is they maybe don't have as strong a handle on some of the numbers things because it's complicated. And if you haven't done it and you haven't had to be responsible for financial reporting, it can get away from you. I'll share with you something that happened to us the first year we moved into our new space, and this caught me by surprise. We had an influx of new subscribers, maybe 600 people, which is huge. And what I didn't realize at the end of our first year, I saw a ticket sale number and I said, oh, well, we're going to do that same thing next year because that's how we usually use as our barometer what happened the previous year. But what I didn't understand was that first year in the new space, those new people were buying subscriptions for that year, and then they also bought advanced subscriptions for the next year in the same year. So I had a bunch of people that had paid me twice, basically, in 1 year, so my numbers were off. And fortunately, I caught it, in about April, before we did the next budget. But it was a frightening thing, and it took me a long time to figure out. It didn't make sense, financially, numbers-wise. And I had to really study it for a long time, and I was a little frightened. I thought I had over-budgeted myself. And fortunately it all worked out. But those are the kinds of things I think that can bite people because it's a big number and there's a lot of things involved. And if you're not financially astute, you can get hurt easily and quickly.
But you also both come from a theater background as well.
Yeah.
You were an actress,
Well.
and Bill is an actress and a
Use that loosely
director.
in quotes, please.
How does that inform how you run the business end of a theater? Is running a theater from a business standpoint the same as running the grocery down the block, or is it a completely different undertaking?
Well, I think in many ways it's the same as running the grocery store. It's all about dollars in and dollars out and what you can afford to do. But of course, we have this added artistic thing that's going on where you have to keep people kind of happy. That's why I stay out of it most of the time. I don't have.
You'll live longer.
Yeah, I don't have the kind of patience that Bill does. I think he's more of an artist than I am. And I think really, if there's a secret to this, I have to say, I think it's that we're a partnership, and because we're married, it's easier. There's a lot of development that goes on after hours, that if Bill and I were not married and I was dragging someone else's husband to dinner with all of these people, might be a problem. Okay. But we're fortunate because we get to do everything together. So I understand when he has to work until midnight at a rehearsal, and I can join him and help him because I have that artistic background. You know, he trusts my eyes, he trusts my opinion, just as I trust his when I'm working on a budget or something else.
Has there ever been a show that you really wanted to do that you weren't able to because of the limited budget or
Oh, I think there are many shows, and for me, it's all about cast size. You know, he'll come to me and he'll have these fabulous ideas, and it's always about, you know, how many people are in that show? That's my first question. It's almost like I don't even care what the show's about, just how many people are in the show.
Does that happen often where it's like, well, Bill will say, I really want to do the show, and you simply say, there's too many people, we cannot do it?
Well, I would never say that to Bill, but I would say if you do this, that means you have to really cut down on the rest of the season. We budget for the whole season, which is, I think, the difference between a commercial theater that's just producing a show as opposed to a full season. So we'll look at things and say, okay, we want to do these 5 shows. This one has 2 people, this one has 3 people. Well, okay, if we want to use 40 actors this season, then you can do a show with 12. Although, you know, when you do go over a certain limit, Actors Equity puts other restrictions on you, it does get more expensive. So it's not just the number of people. There's housing, there's a lot of other things that go into that mix. And it just becomes, and costuming them. Think about it, you have to costume 12 people, you know, everything costs money.
And don't you also
I'm
have
sorry,
to put
Karen,
up the bond for salaries first before you
We
begin
do,
the show?
yeah. And because our cast size has been growing year after year, we just keep adding to our bond at Equity. So I don't know how much money they have of ours now, but we're
How do
fully
you budget
paid.
in the New York actors
Yeah.
that you bring in? That has got to be expensive. Flying them in, putting them up.
Yes, it's mostly the housing and the car rental. And in response to that, we have been slowly purchasing our own. You know, now we have one company car that we try to get many actors to live close together and share because it's cheaper. But we understand how inconvenient that might be, so we do the best we can with that. And we also now have two-bedroom apartments that we rent on an annual basis so that we can house people more efficiently and more cost-effectively. Because when you're just trying to find a space for 2 months here and there in the middle of the season, it's very
Right,
costly.
Yes.
I should have asked Bill when he was here last week about finding it necessary to bring in New York actors.
Well, you know, we have a wonderful group of South Florida actors, 2 of
Yes, we
which are
do.
sitting right here, and we try always first to cast from within, you know, the community. You know, quite frankly, it saves us money. So, you know, we're happy to do it, not only because they're wonderful actors, but because it's good for the company. But they're not suited to every role, and you always have to serve the play. And you always have to find the best actor for that particular part. So even though we try at first to use our South Florida company, if there's a hole, we do have to go to New York.
Is being the company manager simply a matter of looking at the budget and keeping the productions under budget, or is there more to that, to the job
Well,
then?
the company manager is what Nanique does for us, and she handles the housing and the transportation for all of the actors coming in and coming out, and any needs that the acting company has. So people might be confused when you say company manager. It's not the organizational manager.
Got it.
It's the acting company.
Well, what is your role? What is your role? I know you wear several hats.
Yeah.
What do those hats encompass?
Well, I'm really kind of in charge of the administrative side of the business, which means head of the marketing department, head of the development. I'm saying department as if we actually have these departments. Okay.
I love
But
that.
the few people that are everybody working together and doing different things. So I'm in charge of the marketing initiatives. I'm certainly in charge of the development initiatives. And all just running the day-to-day operations of the company. Very often I'll tell people I'm in charge of keeping the lights on and the toilets working. That's what I do.
Yeah. Sometimes that's just the bottom line, you know. Yeah. So, what most concerns you? I mean, as managing director, what is the thing that most stresses you out, or most? I mean, of course, the money, and making sure that the figures line up. But outside of that, I mean.
Well, I think, and this is interesting. This is new for us. Our 3rd year in this great big space where we have, between 25 to 30 employees, full-time people, and a few part-time. The biggest thing that worries me is making sure I can pay everybody's mortgage and that they're going to have a job. That's a big responsibility that Bill and I take very seriously. And we care very much about our employees. This is a tough business. As you say, everybody's wearing a lot of hats, so we ask a lot of them. They work long hours. They are asked to do different things all the time. You never know. And we want to make sure that they're happy and they can pay their bills. And I don't want to ever be in a position, where, we put a notice on the door and the place is closed the next day. I'd like to have at least, 6 months notice. Hey.
Absolutely.
And so we're doing a lot to build up our reserves in that way. We do have about 6 months, in abeyance in case anything were to happen. Let's say you have a terrible show or, and nobody ever comes. I can't imagine that happening because with all our subscribers, we're already, 65 to 70% sold. But, whatever, something terrible happens. I want to know that we can still make our payments to everybody for at least to get to the end of the season.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my goal.
You in fact have we've had this discussion. There are a lot of theaters down here that may have staffs, but there's really one person at the top of it who, without that person, the theater might or might not continue. And in fact, one went under when that primary person decided they didn't want to go on any further. But if I understand correctly, you and Bill have an eye on Palm Beach Drama Works continuing indefinitely, and you're training people
Exactly.
to take over. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know about Bill, but I want to retire. Yeah, it's definitely our goal. We try very much to be very collaborative in everything we do, not only on stage, but off stage. So we bring in people that have a future with us, that we hope will grow in the position, and then as we can afford to move them up, we will, and bring other people, underneath them to help sustain that. In my imagination, 15 years from now, maybe Bill and I are only working 3 days a week or, kind of backing off so that the company, not the acting company, but the Palm Beach Drama Works will be able to succeed us and flourish for years to come. Yeah, we don't see that as it's just about us and it will just, be about us until we die. So.
But following your footsteps would be very, very difficult.
Yeah.
I was
Talk
going to
about
say,
big
if you were
shoes
going
to
to give a
fill.
class, you've stated some facts already that would be included, of course, about budgeting and not more than you can afford. But if you were going to give a class on the business side of show business, the business side of the theater, what would it include? I mean, your audience right here is listening right now.
Yeah,
They
well-
want to start a theater.
Yeah. I think the thing that I didn't know or didn't understand right in the beginning was how much time and effort it would take for development and how you really have to cultivate your donors and you have to cultivate your patrons. I mean, it's great to have great art and to have wonderful actors that, want to work with you and you keep everybody happy. But without those donors kind of fueling this and being the wind beneath our wings and telling their friends and everything to come, we wouldn't be where we are. And that takes a lot of effort and a lot of energy. And if you think actors are difficult, let me just tell you.
Are actors difficult?
I've heard rumors.
So you have to be a PR person
You
as
really
well.
do, and it's a lot of, you're great, and every donor has their perspective and their, and you have to try and guide them so that they don't get caught up in their little thing that they want to see. They have to understand that we're not going to change the art that we do because they want to see Fiddler on the Roof or something like that. And sometimes that's difficult. And then when you do bring them, when you embrace those people and they become so actively involved in the theater, sometimes you have to hold them back, and they need to understand that this is bigger than them and it's not.
Sure.
It's not about them or their money.
Yeah.
You've done a masterful job in developing a relationship with the city and the county. How important is that to running a theater like Palm
Oh, I
Beach
think
Drama
it's hugely important, and I mean, we're living proof. The city, the CRA, the Community Redevelopment Agency for the City of West Palm Beach, would not have bought this building on our behalf if we had not actively pursued a relationship with them on an ongoing basis. And right now, this year, one of my challenges and goals is to really work on our advocacy efforts in the Florida legislature, because they're trying to bring back, a lot of funding for the arts, in different line items of the budget. And if you don't advocate, you're never going to get anything. So we submit and are eligible for grants every year, but sometimes they don't get funded. So we have to make sure that we've done what we can do as a company to make sure they know who we are and where we are and what we need.
So grant writing is also part of what you do. Mm-hmm. Now, was that something that you had to train to do? Because I know that that's very necessary, and it's an art to grant write, right?
Yeah.
So, did you?
Well, I don't do that anymore. I started doing that in the beginning, and Anika was also helping me quite a bit, and now she's kind of our grant writer, and we work together. We kind of come up with what is our focus on this particular grant, what points do we want to highlight, and then truthfully, after you've done a lot of them and you have a lot of things in your kit bag, you can kind of pull out. It's not like starting, reinventing the wheel every single time. But, the budgets that have to be done, a lot of collateral that has to be put together. And both Nanik and I did go to several different grant workshops, grant writing workshops to help with that.
Yeah.
So it's an important part of what we do.
Yeah, and are there grants still out there? I mean, are people still giving money?
Oh, absolutely, but you have to find them, and you have to be sure that they're not asking you to do something that you don't normally do.
Right.
You don't want to apply for a grant that's going to give you $10,000 to do a program that's going to cost you $50,000, that you're not already doing. So getting general operating support is difficult, and then we also try to find grants that fit into the things that we're already doing. But it's a lot of research.
Yes.
You had mentioned the idea of being involved. I know you went to CRA meetings, you went to...
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that you have talked about, and I wish you'd talk about it a little bit more, is the concept of being in the community, being a piece of the community.
Oh, it's very important.
Very visible. It's not just, there's a theater down the block, but we are part of this community. Talk a little bit about how you developed that.
We're members of 2 chambers. I go to all the chamber meetings for the Palm Beach Chamber. I go to all of the West Palm Beach Chamber meetings, and it's a lot of shaking of hands and giving them a card and inviting people to come see us. You'd be surprised how many people still don't even know who we are, or where we are. So, that's a constant struggle. And I do all of those. In addition, I'm often invited to speak at Kiwanis Club and Rotary Club and all of those little meetings. And, you got to do it. You got to just do it. It's a lot of time and a lot of effort, and a lot of people don't come. We have a wonderful partnership with the Economic Forum of Palm Beach County. They're a group of mostly bankers and attorneys and stockbrokers, I guess, investment people that get together once a month and talk about the economy. Whether it's going up, whether it's going down. They have some very interesting topics, but none of them were involved in the arts. And so Bill and I go to all those luncheons. It's once a month. We sit at different tables so we can talk about everything. And we've been very fortunate. We've gotten some wonderful people to come to us from that. In fact, we have a terrific attorney that helps us pro bono for almost everything that he does, and I met him there. And his daughter was a dancer, and I made him come to the theater, and the rest is history.
How do you get... Are there other things that you do to find these donors and these patrons? Do most of these folks find you, or do you go out and make actual, excuse me, but I happen to see that you support the ballet. Would you like to, how do you find
That's harder.
people?
I don't do that as much. But we do, I think people come to us more often than not. Someone will send a note that they've seen a show and they loved it, and we'll follow up with them. Or somebody has a friend. Our board is very helpful with that. Really, all of our patrons are helpful with that. But we encourage everyone to bring a friend to the theater. Introduce someone new, and then of course we're always there, shaking hands and inviting them to the next thing and telling them how important they are to us. And we mean it from the bottom of our heart.
It's like hand selling at a mom and pop bookstore kind of thing. You should try this.
And I do think people appreciate that. I think they look forward to seeing me or Bill, at the theater every night, and knowing that they're talking to people who can make a difference, whether they have a complaint or a kudo.
Group sales. You don't have the image. I think that would bring in groups.
Well, we also don't have a large enough theater. That's always a problem, especially since we're 65% subscribed. We have very few opportunities where we can really bring in large groups. But our house manager has actually taken that on, and she's been very proactive this year, sending emails and you know, getting with concierges and doing other things. And we do have quite a few groups this year. We've gone up, I think, you know, a huge percentage.
Some theaters exist on their group sales. So
Yeah. Well, many of the groups down here we're finding want a very discounted ticket, and we're fortunate. We're not in the position that we need to discount our tickets that much. So some people would come to us and we would say, well, you know, this is our group sales price, and they're not interested, unfortunately. So.
I have to say, I've had the pleasure of sharing a stage with you. You are a wonderful actress. Do you ever miss that side of it, the performance side, or is that something that's just part of your past now?
I really think I'm working pretty hard at playing the role of the managing director. And no, I think I've got that out of my system. I really do. Although I have to say, I had a wonderful moment when we did our 11/11 presentation. You know, we had a big gala the day that the theater opened. And Bill and I were part of the show. You know, we came out from stage, and it was the first time I'd been on stage in a very long time. And of course, there was a lot of applause, wow, that you get a rush. Yeah. So I was thinking a little bit, wow, you know, but I don't miss it. I really don't miss it. You know, I'm very fortunate that Bill includes me creatively, you know, and the marketing and the other things. I feel like my creative juices are satisfied, so I'm happy.
Is there something that to this day surprises you? Do you come into work and are there surprises that you go, oh, I hadn't thought about that, that keep this constantly challenging?
I think so. I'm learning
For
new
instance?
things every day. I don't know if I can come up with a for instance, but I'm learning new things every day. Well, I'll tell you, just today, riding down here, Bill and I were talking about one of our new programs. It's called the Theater Buddy program. And we developed that because several women had told the box office they weren't renewing their subscriptions because their husband died or their friend died, and they no longer had a ride to the theater. Ooh. So we thought, well, wouldn't it be nice to maybe pair these people up so they could still come to the theater? And we haven't fleshed it out yet, but we had a first opportunity this week. And we put two people together, and Bill and I, on the way here, got very frightened, like, oh my God, what if they got into a car? And what's our responsibility? And should we be getting insurance? And maybe we shouldn't be doing this. So yes, there's always something new.
So as I said, there is no business like show business. No business I know. We want to thank our guest, Ellen Beryl, the managing director of Palm Beach Drama Works, which does some of the best work in the region, practically in the state. And we encourage you to go see their work. We encourage you to see all of the work in all three counties, or if you want to include the ones up and down the coast besides that. And if you want more information about what happens to be playing right now, you can look at the calendars on FloridaTheaterOnStage.com. We thank you for joining us. We hope you learned as much as we did, and we do this for a living. We hope to see you back next week. Thank you again.